Lloyd Vance's Insider Football is back for another week here on the Coastal Sports Digital Network and 1029 The Game. So glad everybody could be with us this evening. Got my tag team partner back, Kevin Midgette, and it's exciting times around the National Football League. Season 106 has kicked off, and man, this first week of games was incredible. So, Kevin, how you doing, man?
I'm hanging in there, Lloyd. I can't wait to get into this. There's a lot going on. A lot of people panicked already, and it's week one.
And I put out a tweet, and everybody's talking about it. I was like, "Easy, Mister Overzealous fan, with your season-long assertions, and you know, this guy's done. This team is terrible. This guy's going to be fired, etc." You just got to be careful because last year, uh, 10 teams started 2-0, and 6 of them made the playoffs. So and then conversely, I think there was like 9 teams that started 0-2, and then you still had like 3 of them still make the playoffs. So there's still hope abounding everywhere in the NFL, and it's just fun to watch. It's a roller coaster ride. So set the stage. What was Kevin doing? Was he in front of the TV? Where were you? And I say NFL Sunday because we'll get your take. I think I already know, but how do you feel about these multi-day kickoffs and everything? But talk to me about Sunday morning and what you were doing.
Sunday morning, I woke up like it was Christmas morning. I was ready. It's like, let's go. I'm sitting there, I'm screaming, I'm yelling. It's like, let's jump into this. Enough with the pregame stuff. Because they only have so much material to fill on the pregame shows because we've been talking about it since the Super Bowl. So
Yes.
even they want this stuff to kick off and go. And we'll get into the non-Sunday stuff because I have opinions on that as well.
Yeah. For me, in the NFL, they're already printing money. You know what I mean? Did they really need to have now a 3-day kickoff event? And you know, uh, you have the Eagles on Thursday night. Lifting the banner in front of their fans, which was exciting. We'll talk about that game in a minute. But then the whole thing of Brazil Friday, and it gives you something to watch. But usually Friday night lights. You like to watch a high school game, and I totally was looking forward to Sunday. You know what I mean? Like you, I was like, all right, forget all this pregame shows and all this stuff. Turn the TV on right about 10 minutes before everything starts, about 12:50, and then I'm like, all right, let's go. And did you watch the red zone, or did you watch a individual game?
I don't like the red zone, to be honest. The red zone's like getting
Ooh.
cliff notes when we were kids. It's like you have to go through the whole experience of it. I don't need just to see the highlights of everything. And as much of a degenerate gambler as I am, I don't even watch the red zone. I like the build up. I like the crescendo, the highs, the lows, the peaks and valleys. So I don't watch that. I do like everyone else when the ticker tape goes by on the bottom for the fantasy stuff. I stop what I'm doing for 30 seconds if it's my game. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, yeah. It's I guess I don't have the big attention span because I love the red zone. You know what I mean? They jump in, they jump out. And the funny thing was, they said there was going to be commercials, and there wasn't. You know what I mean? They did like these little drop-ins, but they never left the screen. But it's going to be interesting because we know that ESPN has now bought the NFL Network basically in red zone, and I'm sure changes are coming. So we'll have to watch that. And we're here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game. Coast Sports Digital Network. I'm here with Kevin Mitchell talking about week one, and we'll get you ready for week two. Kevin, I don't know how they do it, but the Eagles always end up on the front page. Jerry Jones wants it to be his Cowboys, but there were two big stories, and we'll get to one. The Cowboys involved in one, but the biggest story was here in Philadelphia area where you and I are. Jalen Carter. I turn and they're like, disqualified, and they show, and you're like, oh my god, what are you doing? And he's just a knucklehead. You know what I mean? They always say, okay, maybe he'll get it. Like, Jerome Brown kind of was a little knucklehead when he came to the Eagles, coming out of Miami, had that swagger about him. But Reggie and the rest of the guys kind of said, okay, you need to kind of grow up. talk about Jalen Carter and the Eagles did survive anyway over the Cowboys 24-20, but just talk about the effect on the game and is there hope for him? I had a lot of Eagles fans texting me, emailing me saying this guy's a punk, get rid of him.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean, think about all the stupid stuff we did at his age, let alone put me with millions of dollars on national TV. It probably been like amplified to the thousandth degree. So I'm not going to jump the guy for that. I think Dak Prescott played him though. I think he got into his dome and made him do something stupid and got him out of the game. So I give Dak credit, all the credit in the world for that. But that being said, I think it should go to like NHL fighting though. It's like Dak should get something for instigation because without that first spit, there's not the second spit. So we got a first spitter here as well. And all in all, Dallas gave the Eagles that game. They're lucky they did not lose that game with Jalen Carter being gone.
Yeah, and once he was out of the lineup, you could see Fangio's game plan was just run awry. And Dallas, I mean, my one son kept saying Javante Williams is looking like a player. I mean, Javante Williams, 15 rushes, 54 yards, had 2 touchdowns. Nobody touched him in fantasy football, and without Carter being in there, they were able to kind of have some dominance. So what do you think in terms of Carter? He got $57,000 fine, basically a 1 game check, but no suspension. Is that warranted, or is your Eagles Kool Aid, green Kool Aid, going to factor in here in terms of your answer? That's what my one buddy. He's like, good, he's not suspended because
Not a little bit.
they need him for the Chiefs.
I think I even texted you. I was like, he should have been suspended. He should have missed the game. But they're like time served, I guess, because what 6 seconds into the game counts as the whole game. I guess. I think the Eagles they get a little bit of a leeway on that because they're defending Super Bowl champs. I think they're like, all right, and they know they're playing Kansas City next week. They want the names and the build up and everything else. Uh, I don't know. Like I said, the one thing I do want to point out though, I drafted Javante Williams at the back end of my fantasy
Oh,
draft. You know what I did? I left him on the bench because I didn't know Jalen Carter was going to spit on Dak Prescott and be out of the game, and he got 2 touchdowns. I still won my week, but I'm just saying I was sweating after Thursday.
yeah, and it's interesting to see. I kind of thought the NFL would only fine him and not suspend him. And it's funny, you and I grew up with the Eagles were kind of the outlaws. I remember all the times Andre Waters would get those
Mhm.
letters on a Monday morning, and Dan Deerdorf talking about he's the dirtiest player in the game and throw him out and all this stuff. And but now it seems like the Eagles are a national team defending Super Bowl champions, and they were like, okay. Uh, he served his time. Let him play in the game, and I'm sure Sirianni talked to him, and they interviewed Lane Johnson later on, and they said, look, we're going to have a talk with him, and that's where your veteran leadership council's got to kind of step in, and he is a great talent, you know what I mean, and just a dominant player. I almost liken him to Warren Sapp was for the Tampa Bay Bucks. They built everything around him on that defensive line, and it just worked for them. So hopefully Carter has learned his lesson. We'll see. I'm sure there'll be other things with him. He reminds me a lot of Notacom Sue, when he was with the Lions and he was just a dominant player and everybody, they still voted for him, but they didn't like him per se. So we'll see how Jalen Carter goes from there. The other big story around the National Football League leading into week one, and I wanted to talk to you. I didn't get to get your take, and I almost knew right away what you're going to say. Jerry being Jerry, Jerry Jones. I said right away, I'm like, he's cutting off his nose to spite his face. Trades Micah Parsons to the Green Bay Packers for 2 number 1s, which will be 24 or higher, in my opinion. And Kenny Clark goes there. So, what did you think of the trade? And then just watching, Parsons played about 29 snaps or so, but he had some dominant plays for the Packers in their win this week.
Once again, preface this as I do every time I talk about Jerry. We want him to live to be 120. We want him to keep making decisions. I want him riding around the Pope Mobile. I want him protected at all times. That being said, with that disclaimer, I think it was a good trade by Dallas, to be honest. I mean, you had a disgruntled player. You couldn't pay him the money he wanted. That wasn't going to happen. So you got two first round picks out of it. I mean, the problem is Jerry and his son are going to have their fingerprints on this draft pick, those draft picks, I should say. So that's the problem right there. And for what Micah Parsons signed for, Green Bay better hope to get something out of this.
Yeah, the highest non-quarterback now out there, I think he's making $47 million per season. Yes, it changes the complexion of the Packers and that defense. Halfley's getting a lot of looks as a possible head coaching candidate off of that defense, and we'll see how it turns out. But Dallas, once you saw them play against the Eagles, they just did not have any teeth on that defense. I mean, there's a lot of retreads on that defense. You have Diggs and Bland in the back, but up front, there's just not a lot of guys that can really get consistent pressure. So uh, Dallas is going to win some games here and there. I figure they're going to come in about 7, 8 wins this season, and it's going to be interesting because, as you said, Jerry Jones, not only the owner, he's the general manager, so he's trying to still run football operations. And I've always said, just like you, as long as he's in charge of football operations and picking players and everything, they're just going to be stuck in neutral. And it's funny because I don't know if you watch Netflix. I watched a little of it. They have this show, all about how he built the Cowboys into this dynasty and all this stuff. And it's laughable because, it's now 30 years since they won a Super Bowl, 1995. So, can Dallas come out of this? I mean, what are you seeing from them?
No. Quick answer on that one. No, they can't. They're locked in with the guys they have right now, and there's nothing they can do. But like the ceiling for them in a perfect season would be 9 wins, fringe playoff team. That's as deep as they can go, and that's playing at their best. So it's like they need to have a situation where they have to just scrap and start over. And Jerry's never going to let that happen as long as there's air in those lungs.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll touch on that game in a minute. And a big thing I always do with Kevin is each week we kind of look at the stats and how everything turned out. In week one, there were 12 games that were one score. Out of the 16. So, 8 points or less. So that just shows you these games were close. It was like a roller coaster ride. My survivor pool pick was Denver. And let me tell you, I almost needed an acid watching that because Bo Nix was almost trying to give that game away. I mean, they're playing the lowly Tennessee Titans. The game's at home. I said, this is no brainer. Lock it in. And Nix has 2 picks. He fumbles a football. The return man had a big fumble late, and it was just like, oh my God, I'm going to be knocked out in week one once again, like I was last year with the Bengals. So, did you have a survivor pick, and how'd you do with that?
I'm in two Survivor leagues, shockingly enough, I know to you. One of them I had Denver, and the other one I had the Bengals. So I had to sweat out
Oh,
both of them in games that I thought were walkovers. I'm like, and here we go. Because we talked about it before on the show, both of us last year had Cincinnati over New England in week one, and we were both knocked out. So it's like, man, here we go again.
yeah, yeah. It's like, oh man, and it shows you like, all right, this is why you shouldn't put some cake on the game, but it worked out, and they survived, and uh, I'll talk about the picks for this week. Home teams, interesting enough, were 9-7, uh, and that just shows you like home field advantage is not what it used to be in the NFL. There's a lot of parity in terms of and I know Chargers technically they were the home team and they were in Brazil, but talked about that. Is there still home field advantage in the NFL?
Yeah, first I'd like to say, hey, Seattle, where's that 12th man at? That 12th man's not really changing the course of the game now, is it? No, no, nobody wants to play in Seattle. Nobody's scared to play in Seattle now with your horrible neon uniforms. So, yeah, the home field advantage, with the exception of maybe, just off the top of my head, say like 7 to 9 stadiums, there's no home field advantage.
Yeah, and with these domes, it's it's neutral site almost, and it's a pristine environment, and a lot of people, it's a corporate crowd, they're looking at the TVs, not even really focused on the field. Want to get your take on, in Philadelphia, there's a lot of debate this week, and I was talking with Nate about it, who's going to jump on later. Jeffrey Lurie, I hear he's leaning towards trying to build a dome stadium so Philadelphia can get the Final Fours, the big concerts, and you know all those types of things. Do you think that would fly in the Philadelphia area? I know everybody always talks about that great snow game that Shady had, and the Eagles beating the Rams in the divisional round in the snow. Do you think that would fly with all the people here, and is it feasible?
Is it feasible? Yes. Is it going to offend the fan base? Most definitely. They pride themselves on being a tough fan base. You bring in the dome, what happens? The dome teams are soft. They can't win in the playoffs for the most part if they have to go on the road. If Detroit, with that great home field advantage of playing outside, put domes up. That's a frightening thing to have to go up there. Like Buffalo, would you put a dome on that? It's like there's certain stadiums and certain cities you do not have domes.
Yeah, I agree with you, and Philadelphia. I know they want to host a Super Bowl and all this stuff, and get the revenue streams from all these things I talked about, Finals Four, and and concerts, and they see Jerry World hosting all these big boxing events, but football is meant to be played in the elements, and now with so many stadiums that are enclosed, it's just a different environment. As you were saying, it's just not the same home field advantage like back in the day, and guys are arriving late, and Philly, it was always about toughness. I still remember the vet 700 level guys, the teams did not want to come in there, and it was a tough place to play. So we'll see if Jeffrey Lurie acquiesces and backs off of thinking about building that dome stadium. But as I always say, follow the money, and if enough people get involved, maybe he'll do it. So we're here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Network. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. We're talking. We're wrapping up week 1, and we'll get you ready for week 2. We'll preview those games. All right. In terms of, and this is so big, a lot of people, I'm on Back Your Play with Rich Q. A big thing now is obviously, and you and I talk about it, who's putting some cake on these games. So a lot of betting. People want to know this stuff. There were 10 covers this week, and there were 4 against the spread wins. There was only 2 outright underdogs that won, the Chargers and the Raiders. So was it a good week for Kevin? Bad week? Was the remote getting broken? I mean, how did the FanDuel count? How did it look?
It looked good to the point where we took some money out this week. We took some money out. So that, yeah, we had a good week. We decided to do a couple different things. They have some things on there. It's like each kicker to make a field goal over 33 yards. Yeah, I'm in on that. Sure enough, boom, boom, hit. And my favorite one after that is a kicker for either team to make a field goal over 50.5 yards. Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Bucker. Thank you, Jake Elliott. Thank you, Reichert from Minnesota. It's like these guys can kick from the parking lot now.
They
It's like
sure
until
can.
they get hip to it, I'm jumping on it.
Yeah, and the one I looked at and I jumped on was a lot of the quarterback rushing yards were light. I thought, you know what I mean? Like like Russell Wilson's, it was like 8 yards rushing. You know what I mean? And all these guys are going to pass a lot of those rushing yards. So that was another one that kind of popped up. Interesting thing was there were only 3 overs, so they got the over lines right, and there were 12. Um, Actually, there are 4 overs. I did that was a Monday night I acted. So 4 overs and 12 unders. But I always say Vegas kind of lets people win early, and then around mid-season they flip the script, and they start making their money back. Those Taj Mahals and Luxor, all those big places out there in the desert, they were built by losing money.
I was watching one guy. He was on my timeline. I guess he was watching the Bills Ravens game, I should say. And you could tell he lost money on it because he's doing. You can just tell by the tone of the voice and everything else. And he's trying to say how the NFL is like WWE, that everything's fixed.
Oh,
How can Buffalo go right down the field, score, then go sideline to sideline, do nothing, and then go 60 yards in 20 seconds for another field goal? And it's like, dude, just admit you lost. You can tell he just is trying to build this case. It's like, nah, man, you gambled, you lost. That's what happens.
yeah, it's not like in Blue Chips the movie where they get to one guy and he
Yeah.
affects the whole game. There's so many players and factors that go into an NFL game, and the ball bounces crazily, and they can always say, and I have my grandfather used to say it all the time. These refs are in on it. They're fixed. All that. No, they're just bad. I mean, those guys. They miss calls, and it's going to happen. But that ending was crazy, and we'll start getting into some of these games. And I know a lot of people have already wrapped up a lot of these, but we'll start talking about some of them. Um, the Philadelphia Eagles, 24-20. A big takeaway I had from this game. There were a couple. Jalen Hurts, I thought, for all the debate, and we talked about it on our show, everybody says, where is he ranked? And he does this and that. But 19 to 23, 152, and then he ran the ball 14 times for 62 yards and two TDs. And when it talks about him in the MVP conversation, it doesn't matter. He just wins. I mean, a guy does whatever he needs to do to will his team to victory. Talk about Jalen Hurts' play in the Eagles' win.
You're absolutely right there. Jalen Hurts just wins. I mean, it's not pretty all the time. I mean, you can kind of ask A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith that. And I mean, most of the balls were 12 yards and under that he was throwing the whole game. If anybody had Dotson with being leading receiver guy for the Eagles, I mean, they're lying.
Yeah, it's
That
crazy.
didn't happen. And the whole thing is Jalen Hurts afraid to throw the ball downfield? Is he just taking what they're giving him? The only thing I can say is, besides the fact that he wins games, is I just see him taking a shot this year. The way he just decides to take off and run, and he's so wide open, he's not tucked or anything like that. I just foresee someone trying to take a run at him.
Yeah, and then it'd be Tanner McKee time, and you don't, luckily no quarterback really got that banged up yet. Brock Purdy's coming out with a toe and shoulder, but no one got knocked out, and you're right because they're hunting these quarterbacks out there. They got to protect themselves, get down, get out of bounds. We saw Patrick Mahomes throw a shoulder into a guy, and stands up and like, yeah, take that. But how many times you want to do that, because these guys are so big and fast, particularly the linebackers, and that was another takeaway, Kevin. I wanted to see, with Campbell and Vaughn out there, they're controlling the middle of the defense for the Eagles. I mean, everybody's doing the hyperbole, saying, "Oh, they're the greatest linebacking group ever." I said, "Hold on, easy." But just talk about how Campbell has stepped right in there and what you see from him and Vaughn.
I think their chemistry is going to grow throughout the season, that's for sure. Going into week one, it looks like they're going to be a problem out there. It looks like for the first time in a long time, the Eagles fan base, I should say, their biggest concern isn't linebacker. They seem to have those two guys in there. And as long as they can get pressure of that front line on the quarterback, you don't have to worry about that secondary, which could be a little sketch at times.
Yeah, speaking of the line, I think they were a little disappointed in the push that they got up front. Nolan Smith got home a couple times, but Jalen Hunt, I still believe, is kind of feeling his way. So the Eagles made a move. They signed Zadarius Smith, kind of a mercenary pass rusher out there, a lot like Justin Houston was at the end of his career, kind of bounced around. He's 32 years old, 9 sacks last year. I think he was in Green Bay and the Lions. But do you think Zadarius Smith is going to make an impact on this Eagles defense?
It couldn't hurt. I'm not going to lie, it couldn't hurt. And from what I understand is, if I'm not mistaken, that they waited till after week one because then if they signed him then, it wasn't guaranteed throughout the rest of
Right.
the season, his money. So basically, after the Cowboys and Eagles played, the only other team that could have picked him up was the Cowboys at that point. So I think the Eagles definitely had their sights set on him and something was in place. And basically, right after that game, it's like, all right, let's go.
Yeah, and I think Fangio is going to deploy him a variety of ways. Unlike Jim Schwartz, he really likes to keep a small group of pass rushers and have them go. He doesn't have that constant rotation, so maybe they can get him in there, and that'll help. Spell. Jordan Davis played a lot of snaps, the most in his career. Was looking a little tired there. Maybe expel him a little bit, and we'll see how that goes. Another big takeaway from this game. Want to get and you as a non-Dallas fan, CD Lamb, he kind of helped the Eagles. It reminded me of Julio Jones in that one playoff game. He had 4 drops in this one, 3 in the second half. The last one was huge because he could have got down in position. Maybe they could have, you know, tied the game or got the go-ahead touchdown. But talk about CD Lamb. Is he going to have a bounce back? And what did you see from him?
I think he'll have a bounce back. There's no doubt about it. But I mean, I think the Eagles also need to send him an edible arrangement right there for all those drops he had. There's this guy that we got into our fantasy league. He's never played sports before. We needed a guy. He's like, I'll throw money in, blah, blah, blah. His first pick is CD Lamb. So he's all hype and everything else. Day after the game, he comes into work just putting down CD and Lamb left and right. Curse word this, curse word that. And I'm like, welcome to the world of fantasy football. Now you're in. Now you're hooked.
Yeah. And he still had 7 catches for 110 yards. So he did have a solid game. But, I thought the numbers that he did get, Kevin, and I was kind of talking to our producer, Duncan, before you jumped on about this. Do the Eagles have a problem at that corner opposite Q Mitchell? So they started Dory Jackson. Somebody, he was old when he left Tennessee, and then he was with the Giants. Obviously, Ringo has not been a guy, and they have Jacorian Bennett in the bullpen they brought over from the Raiders. Are they going to have to shore that thing up? And is it possible they put Cooper DeJean on the outside?
We talked about it before, and yeah, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem all season until they get somebody there. But like I said before as well, it's like if you take Cooper DeJean and put him over there, you're now creating a problem at 2 positions instead of one. It's like instead of just trying to find somebody to fill the spot, make a trade, do what you have to. But the thing is, you move Cooper DeJean, now you're taking him in a position he's not familiar with, and he's not as equipped to play, and you've lessened yourselves in 2 spots.
Yeah, and the thing is, I saw with DeJean, he's looked like he's put on some size, man. He looks more like a safety than an outside corner, and I think he does very well in that slot position. They can blitz him from there. He's a good short tackler against a lot of the running backs coming downhill. So they need to leave him there. They did work out Mike Hilton, who's a veteran guy, who's a free agency. Here, I'll throw a name at you, and you're gonna be like, oh, this is old school. Asante Samuel Jr., free agent. I mean, do you think the team should take a look at him?
It's another situation that couldn't hurt. But you're just going fishing at that point. You're just like basically you're letting everyone know it's like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And what you do is, I guess you bring in these guys, you take a look at them. Once you find out it doesn't work, then by the time October rolls around, you're like, all right, we got to make a move. We have to do something.
Yeah, and it was interesting because today they cut Eli Ricks from the practice squad, a guy who's been on the team for quite some time. I think the biggest thing for me is Kelly Ringo. They drafted him in the 4th round in 2023. Another one of those Georgia Bulldog Eagles, and he just has not lived up to expectations. Um, is he going to get a chance, or you think Fangio's done with him?
I think he's pretty much done with him. If he hasn't taken the opportunity by now, it would take, injury upon injury for him to get that shot again. I think it's going to end up being a situation where he will get a shot. It'll just be on another team.
Yeah, and I think he's kind of in the doghouse, and we've seen that with players. It's just like, all right, they don't want nothing to do with him after that. So the Eagles came out relatively healthy. Ben Van Sermon, he's their fullback. He got hurt. That poor guy's laying on the ground, and then everybody was focusing on Jalen Carter and his spitting thing there. But yeah, he's probably going to be out for the season. Um, they did make another move, and Howie's been really active this offseason in the training camp, tinkering the roster. I almost thinking like, man, this must be like how it feels to have a real fantasy football roster and do what you want. They trade for Tank Digsby coming over from Jacksonville, the fifth and a sixth round pick. Is Bigsby going to fit in there? Um, and there are going to be enough touches for him. I know Will Shipley had hurt his ribs, and they said maybe Bigsby will help out at kick returner. But Saquon had 18 rushes for 60 yards in the game. They clearly he's not going to have that 482 touches as he did last year.
I think Bigsby is all of a sudden becomes the second best running back they have on the roster. I was so impressed with what he did last year for Jacksonville, but Saquon's going to get the touches. It's not like Etienne is a habitually injured guy where he's going to get more touches and everything. Shipley's definitely going to be out. AJ Dillon, that kind of thing. It's like so Bigsby's definitely an upgrade I think for them, but it's going to take injury for him to get more run. That's for sure.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how they deploy everybody. Kellen Granderson, who's a tight end, they said he's probably going to play some fullback going forward to kind of cover um, when Ben got hurt. So, and then tight end wise, it's interesting though because Dallas Goedert's banged up again. I think he has a knee injury going into this Kansas City game, so they're not sure what they're going to get out of him. And then they have Grant Calcaterra also there. So overall, good, solid win for the Philadelphia Eagles to kick off the season. All the fans are excited. They had the guy always sunny in Philadelphia brought did the announcement. Nothing will ever be like when Rocky ran up the steps when they opened the stadium, and then Joe Jaravicius did his thing now. But we're here talking about week one on Lloyd Vance Insider Football 1029, the game, the Coastal Sports Network. So glad everybody could be with us. Uh, Marquee game, the Chargers. Now this was I was like, okay, Chargers. I was talking to Rich Q and we did our predictions on his show, and I said, look, the Chiefs are still the Chiefs. They're going to win this division, but maybe this is the year that the Chargers or Denver jumps ahead of them in the AFC West. In this game, Herbert was stellar. 25 of 34, 318, three touchdowns, ran the ball 7 times, 32 yards. He did take 3 sacks, but talk about this Chargers win. Can it spur them? And then obviously the biggest story was Xavier Worthy. Kelsey knocks his own guy out the game.
Well, first about the Chargers, I think it definitely is going not as talked about is Keenan Allen coming back to the Chargers. Him and Herbert have familiarity with each other, and you could tell it definitely helped out. Keenan Allen looked a lot different than he did last year with Chicago. You looked at Quentin Johnston, who you've been waiting to bust out now for a couple of years.
Yeah.
He goes and grabs a couple touchdowns. You're throwing Lad McConkey on top of that while they're trying to pepper in Amarian Hampton and Najee Harris for whatever you can get out of him. And I think this is a year for the Chargers to make that push. It's like they've been hanging, underneath. It's like, all right, where are we at, Harbaugh? Captain Khaki, if he can't get him going this year, where's he at? So I think that's big for them. Also, as far as Xavier Worthy, I'd like to thank Travis Kelsey for that because I had Hollywood Brown on my fantasy team.
Oh,
And Hollywood
beautiful.
Brown just catching these little dink and dunk passes before he busts get one open a little bit. 10 catches, 99 yards. Thank you,
Sir.
Travis Kelsey.
Yeah, and my son was dog cussing him. My son Braden, he was because he had Worthy, and he was like Travis Kelsey. He's like, I hate Kelsey. I hate Taylor Smith. He's screaming at everybody. Um, Worthy is going to. I don't think he's going to play this week, but they're going to put a harness on him. He's not going to be as long. That was a bad separator shoulder. That did kind of set the tone for the game. Mahomes, as I was talking about earlier, he was out for blood, though. He's playing extremely well there in Brazil. 24 39, 258, had a passing touchdown, ran the ball for 57 yards. The thing is, he threw it to 7 different receivers. And I think the big thing is, Kevin, without Rasheed Rice and Worthy in there, you're just like, all right, who's going to help carry this offense?
Yeah, and also it's the Andy Reid problem that he has, and it's hard to say it's a problem with a guy who's won as many Super Bowls as Andy Reid has and had success that he's had there. Who's your running back? Who's going to be the guy who's going to be the bell cow for you? Because he doesn't want to make it Pacheco. It looks like the whole way he keeps spreading it around the different running backs, and it's like I think they're just trying to find their identity still now.
Yeah, and I love the way Pacheco runs, but he just was not seeing the holes or the line. Line's not blocking the way it needs to. But there just was not a lot of room for him. Kareem Hunt, I think he'll be good in the goal line and catching some short passes. But you're right. Who's going to run the ball? Who's going to be that difference maker? And they're looking normal. And when you start seeing these other teams that we're getting ready to talk about, you start wondering, have they passed them? And a big thing with the Chiefs is that O line still, Simmons came in, did a pretty nice job, but they had 10 penalties. And it seemed like all of them were on Jawan Taylor, their right tackle. I mean, this guy's the walking yellow hanky. I mean, are they going to replace him?
I think everyone gets a little bit of leeway till it hits October 1st. Once it hits October 1st, it's like, and we're moving on. So I think it's like everyone gets a mulligan here in the beginning, but it's like it's a very short leash, that's for sure.
Yeah, good quality win for the Chargers, and yeah, much like you, I'm like, okay, once we reach October around Halloween or so, we'll have a good understanding of who these teams are and who the contenders are and who the pretenders are. So a lot of people have just got to kind of relax, let the season kind of play out. Parcells always talked about split it into quarters. This is only the first quarter, and let's see as the teams move to week 5, 6 where they are. The two teams I was alluding to that may have caught the Chiefs, it's all about the postseason, but these two teams are incredible. I mean, Sunday Night Football is the ultimate reality show. It's just like, wow, cannot turn this thing off. The Buffalo Bills come back in improbable fashion. They win 41-40 over the stunned Ravens. At one point, the Ravens were up 34-19. And even late, they were up 40-25 before Allen put on a Superman cape.
It was impressive. It was absolutely impressive. I'd like to thank once again the good people at DraftKings for giving me such a small payout when I had the Buffalo Bills plus 6.5. They're down by 15. I was like, well, I might as well just keep it in for $2. And sure enough, they go out and win the game. So that was just fun to watch. As a football fan, that was just very entertaining. There wasn't really a lot of downtime. There was always somebody going down the field. The Derrick Henry fumble was huge, though.
Yes.
Lamar, apparently, they were saying reports that he had a cramp at the end. That's why they took the ball out of his hands. And I don't know as much about that. But it was the emergence from Buffalo from Keon Coleman, because it looked like Buffalo did not have a wide receiver to speak of, and besides they leaned on James Cook so much. Keon Coleman really showed out in that game.
Yeah, he did. He had a nice catch off the doink and then, sliding catch in the end zone. And you're right. When you were looking at the Bills' offense, you're like, all right, they have Cook and they have two pretty good tight ends, but do they have anyone else that really can factor in here? So, it's going to be fun to see how this Bill team turned out. But I did think that Henry fumble was, big turning point. But to that, before then, though, Baltimore, 432 total yards in this game, and they were running the ball downhill. I mean, Derrick Henry, 32 years old. I mean, you start saying, okay, could he possibly catch Emmitt Smith's record? I always thought, no one's going to get close. I mean, just talk a little bit about Derrick Henry's effort. I mean, 18 rushes, 169, 2 TDs, but he did have that bad fumble.
Derrick Henry is a freak of nature. You normally do not see a human being, once they hit that age, with the amount of wear and tear and tread off the tires that they all seem to accumulate over their career, the way he keeps going. And once again, not to bring it up again, he was the first pick in my fantasy draft. I said it was the safest pick I ever made. It was lame. I hated making the pick. And then I'm watching him run and just bulldoze everyone. I'm like, this guy's not slowing up. It's like he is just a powerhouse, man.
He is. He's incredible. I mean, it's funny, Kevin, because I always seem to get him, and the guy right before me took him, and I was like, no, you didn't. He knew I wanted him. But sometimes that's the way it bounces in fantasy football. But Derrick Henry is incredible, and the thing is, Lamar played extremely well too. What did you think of the Buffalo fans that kind of got in a pushy shovey match with the first D Hop and then Lamar comes in? The guy showed up making his apology. He had a neck brace on. Imagine that.
Mhm. I mean, it's 2025. Keep your hands to yourself. Unless you're in Green Bay and someone jumps in the end zone and lands in your lap, don't just keep your hands to yourself, man. It's like nothing good's going to come from that, you know. And they have the neck brace and all that stuff. And you got to love the litigious world we live in today, don't you?
Yeah, and he apologized, and uh, the Bills Stadium, I used to always call it Rich Stadium. They said no more. They ejected him. He's not allowed back in. So maybe it'll make a difference. I always say, Kevin, though, they always point the finger at Philadelphia, and there, you know what I mean. And there it is, somewhere else where they're a bunch of dopes. One dope can spoil it for everybody else. So I did like that Lamar came in there, kind of stuck up for his guy, and they got to do a better job in terms of security. So great game. I think we may see a rematch of this in the come playoff time. But yeah, you showed the last two MVPs the excitement that these guys bring to the table. We're here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. All right, time's flying here. So, Kevin, you know what we do each week? We give out game ball winners and the lackey. Hopefully, you've written some down. I will go lackey first. And it seemed like the kickers galore. We talked about how great some of these kickers were. Where there were some of them that were bad. Jake Moody gets his walking papers for the Niners, but the guy that gets my lackey is Brown's rookie kicker from Syracuse, Andrew, and I'm saying Schmidt is his name. 1 for 2 on extra points. I mean, and that extra point factored in big. And then he was 1 for 2 on field goals. He missed a potential game winner 36-yard kick. I mean, yeah, luckily for you because you had the Bengals as survivor, but the Browns gave them everything they got, and their kicker ruined it.
All right, I get you on that one. And tying into your game, my lackey of the week, the Cincinnati Bengals offensive coordinator, Dan Pitcher. How do you go starting out every September so horrible that you bury yourself that you can't even make the stinking playoffs and you're not that prepared to beat the Cleveland Browns? Mind you, is the Browns defense okay? They're okay. They're decent. They're better than their offense, that's for sure. But you cannot come out game one of being historically bad in the month of September and lay an egg like that and not be that prepared. That falls on that man.
Yeah, and Kevin, they kept saying, "Oh, we're not going to start 0-3. We're going to be prepared." And Zach Taylor, him and his staff got to do a better job. They survived. Joe Burrow in his presser, he even said it. He was like, "Ooh, dodge a bullet there." And they've now, instead of they were 1-9 in weeks 1 and 2 under Joe Burrow, starting now they got that. Now they're 2-9, but they have to do a better job. And we'll talk about them coming up. But if they want to challenge the Ravens, they're going to have to play better defense, stopping teams, and then they have so many offensive weapons there. Kevin, it's just like, man, abundance of riches. I mean, you talk about they have a good running back, they have 2 good receivers, tight ends aren't bad, offensive line's pretty good. Um, are the Bengals going to be able to survive this and be in the mix for AFC North title?
Yeah, if they can avoid going 1-3 or 1-4 to start the season, they're great at the back end. It's like, man, just get some early W's and you'll be all right. But it's like just to not be prepared for that it's a shame, just to see it play out like that.
Yeah, yeah, and they walk away and they're like, all right, we got the win. Let's pull the Belichick. All right, we're on to Jacksonville. But
No.
a lot of their fans are like, oh man, luckily got that one. All right, I'll let you go game ball first.
Game Ball is actually going to go to somebody I didn't even care for when he was drafted. I didn't like him in college. I thought he was overrated. I thought he stunk kind of the beginning of the game. JJ McCarthy turns it on against the
Oh,
Bears. He came out of nowhere, man. And it's like you start paying attention and listening. It's like he only took about like 11 snaps in preseason. He really didn't get his legs under him at all, except for practices and joint scrimmages. So the fact the way he evolved just in the middle of that game, I was impressed to hell. So JJ McCarthy gets my game ball.
yeah, that's a good pick there, and usually, I think a lot of guys that get my game ball play earlier in the week, but man, that was a great game to watch. And you talk about the excitement and 12 games being one score or less, and that's one you almost a lot of people would have turned that thing off. And but your guy Caleb Williams, I mean, he was strutting around with his fingernails painted and all that stuff early in the game, but in that fourth quarter, he was terrible, and you could see Ben Johnson just fuming. I mean, so uh, any hope for Caleb and his followers?
Thank you for throwing this question back to me. I was hoping that you would. Watching Caleb Williams, first of all, his pocket presence and his elusiveness, that's impressive. I will give him that. The way he can keep a play alive, that's impressive. That being said, not every ball needs to be thrown at 110 miles an hour. He's throwing the ball so hard and fast past receivers, they can't even get their hands up to catch the ball. Slow down, relax, get some feel. I know he's adrenalized and hyped up and everything, but he's not going to last if he keeps throwing the ball like that.
Yeah, and it's his mechanics. His feet aren't set a lot of times, and there were a couple throws. I mean, that he missed like DJ Moore and Rome Dunze where it was just high, and you're like, wow, just a bit outside. And we had talked about that during the draft process when he was coming out. I remember we had Jeff Little on, a guy, our LA guy, and he was like he said he's very inconsistent, even at USC. He was able to hold the ball a lot, run around and make plays, but it's not college football, and the other guys on the other side get paid. So that was a good win for the Vikings. Brian Flores' group stayed the course, and then you had J.J. McCarthy closing it. I gave my game ball obviously to Josh Allen. I mean, he put the Superman cape on him. He was just tremendous, showing that he's the MVP. And I know our next guest, our intern, he's back. He's up at school, and I know he was excited as HE double hockey sticks about his guy Josh Allen and his Bills coming back to win that game. He was probably pulling his hair out all along, but they got it done in the end. Let's bring Nate in here. Duncan, if you can. Nate, turn on your camera, turn on your microphone. I see you in the wait. Oh, there he is. There he is.
How
Our
we do?
guy, Nate Vance.
How we do? How we do? How we doing, guys?
What's up, Nate?
How we doing?
We're good. We were just recapping some of week one, talking about a lot of things, but we just gave our game balls and Lackey. And I obviously, I gave mine to Josh Allen. Talk a little bit about the game, what you were thinking, and was he your game ball winner this week? Yep. And a little technical difficulty there, Nate. Hopefully he'll jump back on. Look at that. See, that's what happens. College kids, I tell you.
Yeah,
Probably dad didn't buy him a good enough laptop, I guess.
the tech savvy generation right there. Yeah.
Oh, he's back. All right, hold on. We got to punch him up, Duncan. Sorry about that, buddy. All right, there he is. All right, so who's your game ball winner? Talk about Josh.
My game ball winner this week's got down. Carried the team on his back. He had 4 touchdowns. Just looked like the MVP out there. A lot of people saying that Lamar Jackson was the MVP last year, but he really showed on Sunday night who's a real true MVP.
And I know Kevin wants to get this in. Hey, Kevin, his guy, Nate picked him in fantasy. Kyler Murray actually played pretty well. I mean, what'd you think of that, Kevin?
Oh, stop with little Bill's Mafia over there and Kyler Murray. First, I want to give I got to give Nate a shout on though. I told your dad about this. It was the fact that yeah, I picked your brain before you left about the Bills wide receivers, Shakir, Keon Coleman. I ended up taking Keon Coleman, and I appreciate you for that. So before I give you the flowers on that, back to Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, if they played the Saints, man, pull it together. It's like, all right, slow up. What they got Carolina next? All right, he's gonna get off to a nice little bump here, but we'll see where Kyler's at middle of October.
And in week 3, they're at San Francisco. Yeah, they beat the Saints 20-13. Um, but it's the Saints. But Murray got sacked 5 times in this game, and there are some things that kind of alarm me. I know Nate's been very high on Murray and McBride, 2 guys he picked in our league at 6 receptions, 61 yards for McBride. Talk about your Cardinals, Nate.
Yeah, I watched this whole game because, like you were saying, I got McBride, Murray in fantasy. I thought they looked decent. I didn't think it was the best outing. Kyler Murray, he was efficient with the ball in the first half. He had over 125 yards in the first half and two.
What is he in a closet?
I don't know where he is. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. He's probably using his phone or something. It's not.
Yeah.
We'll see. But yeah, he loves his Cardinals this year, and he loves he loves his Bills, and we'll see. I mean, it could be the year. I actually I did my predictions last week with Duncan, and I did pick the Bills actually to go pretty far in the playoff scenario, and the Cardinals to make the playoffs. So
That's
Kevin,
not
is there?
totally,
Yeah,
that's not out of bounds right there. I mean, I personally believe it's got to be the Bills or the Ravens this year. They've done nothing but build up to this situation, and if Lamar doesn't get there or Josh Allen doesn't get there this year, when are they going to get there? They're
yeah.
starting to run out of time as well. I mean, you got Kansas City vulnerable right now. You have to jump at that. I think the NFC is more wide open, definitely though.
Yeah, and I definitely think the NFC's wide open to the point where the Eagles could have a chance to get back to Super Bowl. But I, all along I said, okay, Chiefs will probably still do it again. But it's a situation where those 2 teams, they're playing at a very high level, and I think it may be their time. They just have that look that they're going to play again in the AFC Championship game, especially that back and forth between the 2 quarterbacks, and it was like who had the ball last. So going to be interesting to see if those 2 teams can continue their ascension in the National Football League. And in terms of trying to think another game, well, I think you need to apologize to somebody, and me too. Aaron Rodgers. Yeah, I know. And he stuck it right to the Jets, didn't he? He's like, yeah, it felt good to them. They didn't believe in me. I mean, he's something else. I mean, he's 41 years old. He threw for 4 touchdowns in the game, and um, most 4 touchdown passing games, third all time now. His first since 2020. Just talk about that win for his Steelers over the Jets. I mean, that was another nail biter special. Boswell hits a 60-yard game winner. I thought Rodgers made some nice throws. The biggest play though was Kenneth Gainwell, former Eagle, with the strip and Ben Skoranek falling on that fumble.
Yeah, it was a good game. That was a fun game to watch, actually. That was another one. That was a nice because that's what we had regionally around here to watch since the Eagles and Ravens were at different periods. So, and then to be able to get that game and Garrett Wilson, by the way, was your boy Justin Fields. Let's all not forget who Lloyd's
Yeah,
backup quarterback is. And I was
better
giving it to you
apologize
about
to him.
draft. I was
Oh
giving
yeah,
it to you for it, but it's like Justin Fields for fantasy. That's a good pick, actually. So Garrett Wilson showed up for them. Aaron Rodgers had that date circled on his calendar. He wanted to show up. He wanted to beat the Jets. Now, is he going to play like that in November? That's the question with Aaron Rodgers. It becomes twofold. Physically, can he hold up and be like that guy in November, early December? And also, secondly, does he want to? Because a lot of things with Aaron Rodgers, there's some selfishness with him. And if he feels like he's done enough the first half of the season, you could see that guy check out. So I don't know if he's going to be there, but will he get Tomlin those 500 500 victory percentage? Possibly. It's possibly.
Yeah, and I always said, like, he's selfish, and is he going to be a good teammate? How's this going to work? DK Metcalf, kind of a guy, he's been kind of a malcontent at times. I think Seattle was kind of glad for him to leave, and how's this all going to work together with Mike Tomlin? So we'll see how it shakes out. But yeah, I was laughing because Justin Fields, who Nate just pinged me, he wants me to trade him to him. Like, no, no, I'm going to hold on to him. 16 to 22, 218 with a TD passing, but running the ball well. 12 rushes, 48 yards, 2 TDs. You see the way they're putting that offense together for him. That was a fun watch, which was crazy because who would have thought 66 points between those two teams and those coaches? But that was a great watch. And we're recapping some of the games here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. We'll look at a couple more of these. Then we'll jump over to next week. You know how we do. We'll start looking ahead and make our picks. We'll look at the lines and everything for the upcoming week. This Everybody's talking about the Commanders. Commanders. I mean, they look good at points. They beat the Giants 21-6. Everybody's talking about call me Bill, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, 10 rushes, 82 yards, and a TD. Did you have him on your squad?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But it's like you didn't know Brian Robinson was going to be traded at that point either. So it's like it kind of opened it up for him a little bit. Yeah, he's got some ability. There's no doubt about it. And yeah, Washington's going to be decent. They are. It's like as much as I want to begrudge them a little bit, it's like no, they're going to be good. It's going to be a big test for them this week, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, they are Thursday night, so tomorrow it's a quick turnaround. We'll talk about that game in a minute. They're at Green Bay, who looked very good. Um, the thing is with Washington, obviously they have Jaden Daniels. I mean, he had 68 yards rushing, 233 passing. Very efficient, but they're a little old at certain spots. Zach Ertz did get a TD, but he's up there in age. You got Bobby Wagner, you got Vaughn Miller. They got some age on their roster. So you wonder, like you were saying, once we get to November and all that, are these guys going to hold up? Are they going to be healthy? And Deebo Samuel, we picked on him all season, said he was getting a little chunky. I mean, he had 7 catches, 77 yards, a rushing touchdown. You wonder, soft tissue injury, is he going to be able to keep it going? And then also from this game, Malik Neighbors was fighting in week 1 with head coach Brian Dable.
Yeah, that's not going to end well at all. Especially, you know what's going to happen. You're going to see Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart. You're going to see somebody in there besides Russ. I'm guessing by the 3rd week in September. That's when it's going to go down. Russ will play again this week against Dallas. Depending on how that goes, they might have a quarterback switch already after that.
Yeah, the Giants, Giants play 10 teams that made the playoffs. The only schedule tougher is the Eagles. They play 11 teams that made the playoffs last year. The Giants, you feel for their fans. Big Blue, there's probably going to be a long one for them. So they're at Dallas this week, then Kansas City, who could be 0-2, and they're already in desperation mode. They have the Chargers at the Saints. Maybe they can get a win there. And then they have Philadelphia at Denver at Philadelphia. So it's like, wow. And I do agree with you. As well as Jackson Dart looked in the preseason, why not give him his opportunities? Look, at this day and age, Russell Wilson, you know what you're getting from him. He's no longer a dynamic guy, and that team's kind of stuck in neutral. They don't have the presence on the offensive line they used to. So it's going to be an interesting season for the Giants and their fans. And we're here breaking the games down. The only other one that I wanted to talk with you about, and we talked about it early on in the show. This was the biggest story in NFL prior to Jalen Carter spitting. Micah Parsons in his debut. I mean, the Packers look dangerous. They beat the Lions last year, put up 33 points per game. The Packers dominated them. 27-13. I mean, this one is an eye opener. Are we seeing a changing of the guard in the NFC North?
Yes, I do believe we are. I think Detroit, from what we saw, I'm not. I don't want to take anything away from what the Packers did, but Detroit definitely, you could tell, losing both coordinators, losing your center. I mean, they had problems. Both sides of the ball, and it might be the time where Dan Campbell now has to rely on other people than the people around him. He has to come up with of his own things right now. So with Detroit falling off, Minnesota, I thought they were going to drop off a little more. We'll see what McCarthy does. But Green Bay, I think Micah Parsons adds that tenacity that they've been lacking. That mouthpiece, maybe the focal point where everyone else can just do their thing. So I think Jordan Love maybe will function better with that, where everything's not just pointed at him.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because the Packers are still the youngest team in the National Football League. Bring Parsons over with that swagger, and you pair him with Gary, and the rest of that defense has some teeth with McKinley and some of the other guys. So, um, yeah, they're going to be a dangerous team. They have 4 sacks in the game. Um, and then in terms of Detroit, you're starting to wonder about, are they the same team? Or over the last couple of years, they won 15 games, and then we all know they lost at home in the playoffs to Washington. 7 penalties in the game, a real bad one by Brian Branch where he ripped off Kraft's helmet and threw it. Just were not very disciplined. At one point, it was 24-6 in this one, and you could see the Packers fans were extremely excited. And Parsons had 3 pressures and a sack in the game, and he's only going to get better. So Chicago is at Detroit. I'm interested in that game. And we talked about tomorrow is Green Bay and Washington on Thursday Night Football. So we're here on Lloyd Vance, Insider Football, 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. I'm here with Kevin Midgette. Nate popped on for a little bit. We'll get him another time. All right. Let's talk about week 2 because, as we know, once the train starts rolling on a season, it's like, all right, you can review a little bit, but it's on to the next week for these players. I remember going in the locker room, even after the game, the guys was like, yeah, well, let's talk about the next opponent. They didn't even want to really talk about the game. So that's for us fans and Monday quarterback analysts. All right, Thursday night, Washington Commanders, they're 1-0. They're at the Green Bay Packers. We talked about this national story. It's on Prime, 8:15 Thursday night football. Green Bay is a 3.5-point favorite. Uh, over under is 48. So, let's break this game down a little bit and give me a pick.
I think it's going to be whose will can be forced the best. Can Washington get Jaden Daniels out running around creating plays because that's where he's going to be dangerous? Or can Green Bay contain him and make him stay in the pocket and throw in the lanes? I like Green Bay in this game. I like Green Bay to win the game, but my caveat is I like Washington with the points, plus 3.5.
Okay, and I agree with you. I think that Green Bay is going to dictate the pace of the game. Josh Jacobs ran the ball pretty well, and Jordan Love, despite having that left hand injury, was able to spread the football around. Now they're another team, much like we were talking about the Chiefs. They need a receiver to kind of step up and be that guy. They gave Christian Watson some money. He's injured. They're hoping that their rookie that they got from Texas, he can step forward, but he didn't really have a lot of catches. Dobbs had a couple, but Washington, I think this pass rush is going to be a problem. They do have Larry Tunsil on their offensive line, but the line is kind of spotty, and Daniels may be running for his life. So I think that Green Bay does win this one. They're so tough at home, um, and I think they do cover the 3.5. So that's going to be a fun one to watch tomorrow night. Jacksonville 1-0. Trevor Lawrence, hey, finally he's doing something. And Travis Etienne looked pretty well. The defense had some nice plays. So Jacksonville 1-0 is at Cincinnati 1-0. Cincinnati, as we said, in survivor mode. I think as long as they can block Hines Allen from the Jaguars, I think that Cincinnati's going to have a much better effort this week. They'll be at home. Everybody's going to be a little angry by the just barely beating the Browns. Uh, I think Cincinnati wins this one. Cincinnati is a 3.5-point favorite. Over under is 48.5.
I think Cincinnati comes out. I think Cincinnati takes this game. I think they basically, it was the whole, oh God, we finally got by them last week. I mean, they know they should have lost that game. They know they didn't play well. So the fact they actually did get a win out of that, I think is going to go a long way for them. Also, on a fantasy aspect, with Tank Bigsby being gone, Etienne, everyone knows he can play. Everyone knows he's good, but he's injury prone. He gets hurt. So Tootin, their rookie draft pick, I would look at him right there. If someone you want to add to the back end of your lineup, that's one of those games I can see the over hitting on that. I can see those guys just getting into a shootout at some point.
Yeah, and hopefully the weather's good. I know it was a little rainy this weekend in northeast part of the country. But yeah, I expect a lot of points in that one. And Trevor Lawrence did play very well, and it seems like Liam Cohen may have a game plan for him. He does have some playmakers, and Thomas Jr. as well as Hunter. The thing is with Hunter, he only played about 6 snaps on defense. I think they're going to concentrate more on him on offense there. So yeah, that should be a fun game to watch. Another 1 o'clock game we'll kind of preview here on the show. The Bengals, everybody's darling. They pulled out the win on Sunday Night Football. They are at the Jets. Jets put up a good effort. We talked about it against the Steelers. Buffalo's a 6.5 point favorite, over under 46.5. Is Josh Allen going to put Superman cape on again?
No, I don't like this game at all, to be honest. I mean, if I have to pick a winner, I'm going to pick the Bills to win the game. But I think the epic high after coming back and beating Baltimore, especially, Baltimore is one of those teams you have to go through to get to the Super Bowl. Coming off of that, playing a division rival, I don't like that game one bit, to be honest. I think it's going to be an ugly, closer game than people think. But I think Buffalo pulls it out.
Yeah, I think they can pull it out. And the defense, the Quentin Williams and the rest of the guy on the Jets defense, they can still get after you. I know they allowed a lot of points, so this if you have Bills, play them. Shakir, Cook, definitely get them in your fantasy lineup. Um, Coleman, as you were talking about earlier, he's on my bench, but I may have to get him in there. But I think, yeah, they'll score some points. Justin Fields, we'll see if he reverts back. I mean, if it
Yeah.
starts turning the football all over. The thing is with the Bills, much like we were talking about the Eagles, they got to shore up their secondary in particular, giving up passing yards. They gave up a lot of passing yards that game to Lamar Jackson and rushing the football as well. So that defense has got to have some more teeth. Sean McDermott's got to clean that thing up. But I think they will. And everybody's talking about the Bills have that look. And their schedule is favorable. They're only playing 5 teams that made the playoffs last year, so they get an easy part of their schedule. At the Jets, they have Miami, New Orleans, New England, at Atlanta, a bye, then at Carolina. So some very winnable games before they play Kansas City in Week 9. So, we'll see if they're able to maintain this streak and come into Kansas City, to host Kansas City undefeated. But I definitely expect them to take care of business against the Jets. That 6.5, as you said, may be a lot because we've talked about the games are so close. Going to kind of jump around here. Uh, there's a couple survivor pool games that I'm looking at, and I get your take on. The Rams are at Tennessee. Is that a good survivor pick? I would think, they should play well. Matthew Stafford played pretty well in their win over Houston, and Tennessee. Ward was okay, but you just wonder where the playmakers are for the Tennessee Titans.
It's a survivor pool wise. It's a game I stayed away from. Should the Rams win the game? Yes, but from that Tennessee Denver game, is Tennessee better than we thought, or is Denver worse than we thought? You don't know after week one. That's the problem of it all. So there's too much going on for that one. I stayed away from it.
Yeah, and the other survivor one, the one I'm going to take, the Browns are at the Ravens. They kept Schmidt around, so he's still kicking for him. The Ravens are going to be extremely angry in terms of losing that game in the final seconds against the Bills. I expect them to put up big numbers. The Ravens are a heavy favorite in this one, giving 11.5 points, over under 45. Uh, Lamar Jackson, is he going to have 300 total yards or more?
That one's interesting. Lamar over 300. I'm gonna take a look at that one and see what the odds are on that because now you piqued my interest on that. Baltimore, I took as a layup in my survival pool. They got this one. There's no way they're going to start out the season 0-2 and lose that game. So yeah, that's as easy as it gets as far as picking a winner, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll go through some of these other ones quickly. Giants at Dallas. Does Dallas right to ship? I think they do against it. As long as they can block Burns and Abdul Carter. Lawrence is a little banged up front, but for the Giants, do you think Dallas gets back on track? It's a 1 o'clocker. They're a 6 point favorite.
Yeah, I think Dallas takes this one, and you said already that with the neighbors and the head coach and Russell Wilson, and they just got too much going on in the Giants locker room right now. So Dallas gets a W.
Yeah, and you can tell your buddy that has CD Lamb. I expect him to have a big one. I mean, he's not going to be dropping passes and everything. He's going to get that home cooking, and he'll probably get him going. And typical Dallas fans will all be jumping around talking about, we're back, baby. But it's the Giants, so I expect them to win that one and to cover that 6 points. Chicago Bears. They're 0-1. They're at Detroit 0-1. And you got the Bears kind of coming in there, they're not limping as much as the Lions, in my opinion. Lions already had a couple guys that are a little banged up, injured. Do you think the Lions stumble again, get out to 0-2 start?
It's going to be interesting. It's another game I don't particularly like myself. It's an ugly division game once again. You have two teams that came out of the box 0-1. Someone's got to win this one. Nobody wants to go be 0-2 in this. I think the Lions need this game way more than the Bears do. So you're going to see that urgency, I think, on their end.
Yeah, and they're going to attack that Bears defense that has some injuries. You know, uh, their linebackers just weren't covering very well, and I expect them on Ross St. Brown and Laporta to kind of beat up the middle of the field, and then maybe they go over the top. Jameson Williams. Obviously, the key thing is Jared Goff. Which Goff is going to show up. The Bears with Sweat and those guys, maybe they get some pressure on them, but I think that the Lions win this one. They're 6 point favorite. I may take the Bears in the points there, but I think the Lions win the game outright. And then it's also, as always, got to watch kickers in that one. Santos a little shaky for the Bears. This game's interesting, Kevin. We come down a stretch here in Lloyd Vance Insider Football. Denver Broncos 1-0. They're at the Indianapolis Colts, and I wanted to get your take. Daniel Jones, is he back? I mean, should people believe in him?
Believe is a very strong word. I tell you what, Miami doesn't look good. Miami does not
I
look good
agree.
at all. So I'm going to also put in the fact that I like Drake May against Miami this week if Danny Jones. Danny Dimes can do that against them. But let's not forget the Colts have weapons, though. Ty Warren, he looked like a beast out there already in his first game,
Yes.
let alone with the rest of the talent they have there. So that Broncos Colts game, another one I don't like as a bettor, but at the same time, I want to watch it because there's going to be some offense. It's going to be a good game. It's just you just don't know which way the pendulum's going to go.
Yeah, you're not sure, and the line's pretty close, and Broncos defense has got to show up. They did have 6 sacks of Ward when they beat the Titans, so maybe that defense gets after Daniel Jones. He makes mistakes like he used to with the Giants. I'll go with the Broncos and a close win there. Um, Obviously, coming down the stretch, a big one. Philadelphia Eagles at the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a rematch of the Super Bowl when the Eagles won 40-22. Obviously, the score was not that close in the Super Bowl. The Eagles had 6 sacks, and Patrick Mahomes were all over them. I'm going to be interested to see in Kansas City if they can duplicate their effort that they had in the Super Bowl. I still can't bet against Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes. I think the Chiefs win this one somehow, but surprisingly, the Eagles are a 1 point favorite in Kansas City.
I'm going to pick the side of the typical Philadelphia fan on this one. I'm going to say there's no way that the NFL lets Kansas City go 0-2. I think you're going to get some questionable calls, and you're going to hear every Philadelphia fan complain that it's fixed and everything else. But as just straight out looking at the game, I think Kansas City takes that one. I wasn't that impressed with the Eagles, to be honest. I thought they did some things well, but I don't think they stood out more so than a lot of other teams. So I think it's definitely a pedestrian game for them going into it. You go into Kansas City, you have to show up for that one, and Kansas City's coming. That's a long flight from a loss, by the way, coming from Brazil. So I think they'll be ready to go.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a competitive game, but I think Andy Reid, Matt Nagy, and Spagnuolo will be in the ears of their team, and they'll have them ready to play Patrick Mahomes, obviously. But another great week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 129 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network. Great job, Kevin. Uh, Appreciate everybody listening. We'll get Nate on again, and we'll make sure his connection's a lot better. Everybody out there, make sure you bet responsibly if you're putting some cake down on the games. And we will talk to you next week here on Lloyd Vance Insider Football on 1029 The Game, Coast Sports Digital Network.